All right, so we are going to be actually exploring interest. And it's more specifically, simple interest. There's something called compound interest. We're not going to get into that. But interest is something that could make you so much money in the future, or it could leave you horribly, horribly in debt, depending on how you use interest. The most basic example is, or what it is payment for the use of money over time. If you take a loan from the bank, let's say the bank, you take $325 as a loan from the bank. $325. They're going to let you borrow $325, but it's not going to be just $325. And then you say, oh, let me just give you the money back. They're going to say, as payment for borrowing money from us, you are going to have to pay 8% interest on that $325. 8% interest. And so you're like, okay, I'll borrow $325 and then I'll pay you back $325 as well as the 8% interest for letting me borrow that money when I needed it. And so maybe you probably want to figure out what that 8% interest is going to be. So let's say I have X, I'm going to put X out of 325. I need to know how much of 325 is 8%. So I'm going to say equals 8 out of 100. Okay, 8% out of 100. So I'm going to cross multiply. 100x is equal to 325 times 8, which is 2,600. So we figure out what x, the value of x is, which is the amount that I'm going to end up having to pay. I'm going to divide by 100. It's a weird 100. Divide by 100. X is equal to, I'm going to make that purple, x is equal to 26. So if I was borrowing $325 from the bank and they said, well, you have to pay 8% interest on that, I'm going to end up having to pay $325 back plus the $26 in interest. $26. So that's going to end up being $351 that I have to pay back. So that's what kind of stinks about borrowing money is you can't just borrow the money and pay the money back. You have to borrow the money plus the interest on the money. If it's a lot of interest, you're going to have to pay a lot more than what you actually borrowed. Let's take a look at how you can actually use interest to make money though. So let's say you put your money in the bank, you put $500 in the bank. The way banks work is that they say, okay, you put your money in this certain type of account, and since you're putting in that account, we're going to actually use your money to maybe give out loans, to maybe do other things with it, to make money for the bank. And so since you're letting us use that money for that, and all these other things, we're going to give you interest on your money. Now there's lots of laws in place to make sure that the bank doesn't run out of money, or that when you give the bank $500, they don't say, oops, we used it all up. But the general idea is that they pay interest for the money that you put in their account, put in the account for them to use. And it's a good way to make money that way. And so let's pretend with your $500 that they say, we're going to give you 10%, 12% interest on your $500. And you want to say, okay, well, how much money is that going to make me if they're giving 12% interest? 12% is really high for a bank, actually, so you probably won't see that. But just for the example, let's see what it would end up being. So let's say I have X out of, well, let's use a different color for X. X is going to represent the amount of money that I'm going to get in interest. X out of $500. How much of 500 is 13%? I'm going to say equals 13 out of 100. 13 out of 100%. 13%. I'll use a different color. 13 out of 100. So let's do our cross multiplication. I'm going to say 13 or x times 100. That's 100x is equal to 500 times 13. 500 times 13 is 6,500. I'm going to divide by 100 so that way I can get x. Divide by 100, divide by 100. X is equal to $65. So if you put $500 in the bank and they gave you 13% interest on the $500, you would make $65 on the $500 that you put in there. So that means you got $565 from the $500 you put in there. Pretty sweet deal. That's the general idea of what investing is. It gets even more intense when you have something called compound interest, which you can explore if that's something that interests you. You see what I did there? So that's simple interest, either loans you're taking out or money that you're loaning to others, and how you figure it out.